even though they were training smart, they didn't know the whole ins and outs of it because they're focused on not trying to fucking die.
Well, the pushback would be the reason why it hasn't expanded is because of the early specialization in the drugs.
Yes.
Right. So the counter to both of those, I think you already kind of countered the drug thing. Like it's being used all over the place.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It doesn't really matter.
If we want to go back to the steroids, really, the Germans are responsible for that. The first inclination that anybody was using anabolic steroids was Nazi Germany. They made them in 1936, 37, and they were using on stormtroopers to increase aggressiveness. So how long had they been in sports? Did Babe Ruth fucking use them?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know.
But possible. They're around. And if they're around, right, people are going to fucking find out and do them if they can get a little edge on people. So I'm not saying I don't want to take people's great-grandparents as idols away from them.
I get it. But
you get my point. Hank Aaron and all them were all in those eras where they could have used shit, and then all of a sudden Mark McGuire's an asshole. Like, come on now. Easy. You know what I mean? So that's something to really think about. You know what I mean? But I think you start to realize that everything started to change in the training protocols around the globe, not even including conjugate, when we started understanding stress and adaptation response from Hans Selye and the gas theory. Once that happened in the early 50s, 56, you see periodization hammer.
See, that gets interesting to me because I learned that when I was in college, right? But I didn't really learn it.
And you didn't learn how that applied to anything.
No, fuck no. I just learned what it was, you know, and interestingly enough, you're trying to think this through, you know, with the way I was training and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's such a prime component of periodization when you go back.
Well, it goes back a little bit farther back for us too. So in the 40s, there was a guy named Dr. DeLorme, and he worked for the U.S. Army, and he was trying to help rehab patients and bring their strength back after maybe like a bullet graze wound, where you're not going to be debilitated your whole life, but you do lose some strength after surgery, or if you maybe have to wait around 8 weeks and want to build it back up. That was when linear periodization, the pyramid model, was created. And I think because it was created by an American doctor, that system was very hard for the beginning positions of periodization in the American to let go, because that's where it started. You know, so it's heritage. Whereas the Russians didn't care so much about heritage, they cared about results. And they had way more resources and way more money and way more researchers studying something that we should have been studying. And it all came back down to math. What I mean is, if we go and look at every sport in Olympics, how many of them are anaerobic and how many of them are aerobic? And if you start doing medal counts, including weight classes like Olympic lifting, shot put, javelin, hammer, high jump, I don't need to keep going on and on, but you get my point. Why wouldn't you study anaerobics if you wanted to appear to be the strongest country in the world? You would. That's the whole reason why they did it, is they wanted to show that their system was better than democracy. And one way to do that is to win all the fucking medals, to show that we have more discipline, we have more research. You guys are just training in the dark ages, which we were. So
for those that don't know, explain gas, explain it.
Basically, when the body is shown or experiences a stressor, it has an adaptation to that stressor, depending on the severity and the length of the stressor. So again, law of accommodation, let's bring it back down to training. If I squat 5 sets of 5 for 2 fucking years straight, twice a week, the first 6 months I'm going to get stronger at it, and then it's going to flatten out because the stimulus didn't change, didn't increase, didn't get any better. I'm saying if it was the same weight, same rest periods, there's all kinds of things you can change, but it's really easy to understand that 5 sets of 5 will only work for so long. You got to shorten the rest periods, you got to increase the weight, you got to do tempos, you got to change positions, fucking bars, or whatever. But the point is if it's the same bar and the same weight and the same structure, after about 3 weeks, it's no longer going to be as efficient as creating a result. That was the first explanation of that, was Selye's gas syndrome, or whatever you want to call it. So that's where they started to realize, well, hey, training is this fucking stressor. How do we make it more optimal? And that's when the gears started to turn. And
that's, to me, that's where it gets very interesting, because when you're looking at adaptations, there's stressors from all factors. There's muscle fiber stressors, there's mental, there's nervous system, there's all these.
Let me go over my notes because I have all of them laid out for you. It's actually really interesting because we only think of muscle, right?
Most, yes.
So let's go here. There's actually 4 areas of stress. Yeah. Periodization attempts to control some, if not all of these, if done in the proper range, i.e. barracks, control, nutrition, sleep, blah, blah. Physiological, right?
Yep.
So that's our body's hormonal system, all this other shit that you're starting to talk about.
Yeah.
Behavioral. Yeah, behavioral stress. So how much of behavioral stress did we get introduced to being around Louis?
Just cultural. Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, just you're
social,
walking in.
Yeah. Are you talking social or psychological, or are those two different?
Could be all kind. We have emotional as well.
Yes.
But behavioral might be, say, we walk in and we have these certain ways that we're supposed to act at Louis' gym.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We felt that. Emotional stress. So now I walk in, I know Dave Tate's going to tell me my triceps are fucking garbage.
Yeah.
So now I'm stressed out about it. That's emotional. It's somewhat behavioral as well. Those are kind of tied together, but emotional stress is another one. Then we have structural stress. Why did your bone break? Why did you break your hip when you squatted?
Yeah.
Why did your knee blow out? Because you did knees over toes. You know what I mean?
No, I get it.
But you get my point. Yeah. You have structural stress as well, which is muscle tension.
Yes.
So think about, you have 4 major areas of stress, and most of us only focus on, well, what about that squat? Well, what about I had to work 10 fucking hours? What about I didn't get to eat, every 3 or 4 hours? What about I didn't hydrate correctly because it's 100 degrees outside? Factors, again, that you have to be aware of. So we have 4 areas of stress that thing can be applied to, and all of them do have some factor in your training. Right?
Oh, yes.
But how many of us are thinking about any of that shit?
I would like to think everybody, but I'm wrong. Right? Because it's people that I've been around have to think about all those, and it's I've always broke it down easier and say that every weak point is either physical, mental, or technical, and most people want the physical answer.
Oh, exactly right.
What exercise do I need to do to increase my bench?
Yeah.
Well.
So what was funny is when you start seeing this variation of mode, you start seeing these people like Verkhoshansky, Tatian, and Kodikin start talking about how multiple methods create a better long-term result than specific methods too fast. Actually, the actual quote is, different means and methods because of law of accommodation and gas syndrome. Theory on adaptation was showing significantly greater effect than contemporary loading schemes when utilizing a varied training method. I mean, so if you just want to take, I don't know who Tatian is or Kodian. I know those guys. I've seen a lot of their work and different stuff, but Verkhoshansky was by far and away one of the smartest guys to ever live in strength training. And if he's saying that, dude, I mean, automatically that should be step back. It's not as easy as being specific all the time. And that shit came from 1966. Fuck.
Yeah.
60-something years ago, and we're fucking still fighting this on the internet.
Well, the specificity is always interesting to me because of how it gets defined. And I've said this a million times on the podcast, but, in powerlifting, they'll talk about a comp lift. And I'll say, well, how do you define that? Right? Because to me, you have to take it out of the rack, walk it out, squat, you get a squat command.
Sure.
And then rack command. That's a comp lift. So as soon as you do a double, you're already a couple deviations away from what a comp lift is. So how many deviations are we allowed to go where
it's not specific, or it is still specific?
Yeah, I know. And that's just specific of a movement pattern.
I calculate specific in my wheelhouse. Is it the exact same foot? Let's just say squats.
Sure.
Is it the exact same foot placement? Is it the exact same position on my back? I.e., am I doing a high bar, low bar, wherever I may like it to be? And is it with a straight bar with actual weight? That to me is a comp lift.
Yeah.
Now the rep range could stay, for variation purposes, 1 to maybe 5. Once I say you get above 5, it has no bearing.
Yeah.
Right. But 5 can still make a 1 strong. You can work 5s and singles will still get better. I mean, Eddie based most of his training on all that. We can't really argue with 75 world records. But the point being is, like, specificity could mean all kinds of different things. Did you wear your cleats today? Do you have all your pads on when you're practicing? Those are sports specific type things. So it can depend heavily on what your sport is and what you're defining as. But as a conjugate power lifter, straight bar, straight weight in the exact same position that I do a competition lift. If those 4 things are locked in, I consider that a competition style analysis.
Yes.
Would you agree?
No, I would agree 100%. You know, what I like is it's defined. You know what it is.
Yeah.
Most people don't.
Right.
Right. But they'll bitch, you know, to other people to say, well, that doesn't have any specificity. And, you know, it's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Because are we talking about contraction mode?
Because there's all kinds of exercises that have squat type muscular reaction or actions to it that aren't necessarily a comp lift. A depth jump is a squat.
Yeah.
One of the best ways that you can support the podcast and your training is to join the crew. When you join the crew, you get an extra crew cast podcast every single month. You also get access to our Discord, which has a training Q&A with Team Elite FTS members. You get form checks. You can upload any of your training footage and have your lifts diagnosed, sometimes within minutes, by multiple people. Access to close to 30 different ebooks, training logs, and first sign up access to our weekend training retreats, train your ass off, and other events that we do. Biggest takeaways from that, though, what people enjoy the most and get the most out of is the training Q&A and the form checks, as well as the extra podcast.